Right. So I'm Jeremy Guzman, and I'm here to talk about proliferation of meta-governance structures. So I'm really excited. So, quick introduction of who I am. At the moment, I'm a director of tech over at Blockchain Education Network, also the founder of Mass Adoption, and the potential governance champion over at Uniswap, which is extremely exciting stuff that we're doing both at the Ben end and on the Uniswap end, something that I'll touch on later on in the presentation. So ultimately, the bigger question here, right, as we've been seeing throughout all DeFi, is this emerging conversation of governance, meta governance. How can the community be more involved or earn participation, um, merits, things of that nature? And ultimately, this goes down to the simple question of what is governance, right? So the concept of governance has basically evolved to have like an array of definitions, right? And I think we could consolidate them into three pretty basic fundamental rules, right? So number one is organizational frameworks um, that rely on the use of mechanisms, individuals, or basically both to carry out a set of rules, policies, and processes, right? The second definition or second principle, if you will, is governance is the coordination of an organization's resources and actions through the use of contracts, explicitly and implicitly, something very interesting that we'll see as we transition into meta governance structures. And lastly is the execution of all decisions and actions in transparent fashion, right? And this is to ensure the accountability of all participants and stakeholders while affirming organizational legitimacy and overarching vision, right? So it's pretty basic, pretty streamlined uh, tenets, right? But now what begets of this is what determines or what dictates good governance, right? And that's something by and large has been in the conversation or circulating conversation within the crypto space for quite some time now. Now, good governance tends to abide by five precepts, right? One is legitimacy and voice. Basically, what this means is that the organization in question decides or should be reached and decisions should be reached, excuse me, by broad consensus, right? And this is done through open, frictionless communication or opportunities of communication to further stimulate participation by the stakeholders or other participants within the community. Two is the direction of the organization or direction of this said entity, right? So everyone needs to be all hands on deck, right? In terms of understanding the organization or entity's culture. There's the social complexities that lie within, short and long-term goals, etc. Right? So decisions have to be made with the overarching objectives in mind, as well as the anticipated roadmap and future objectives in line or in vision as well. And thirdly is the performance, right? So efficiency and effectiveness in the name of the organization is basically the name of the game, right? So participants and stakeholders, they have to utilize any available resources to execute fruitful developments that will benefit the protocol organizations at hand, right? And this trickles down into the fourth precept, which is transparency, right? So there has to be an internal and external exhibition of accountability that's further reinforced by a democratic process, whether that be in voting or that be reaching consensus of some sort. Transparency, by and large, is the key to efficient performance, right? Or efficient understanding. And then lastly is just to be fair, right? Good governance is to be fair, in which organizations need to be steered by a rule-based decisions, not of discretion. Discretion-based decision ultimately stimulates or provokes misunderstanding or misconstruement of certain proposed concepts. It really isn't a good way to organize or coordinate an organization, right? So this in turn produces equity and equality for all participants and stakeholders. So as organizations grow, we've seen that internal structures begin to consolidate or kind of constrict into these hierarchical shapes or structures, right? And participants begin reporting to a higher up of some sort, whoever the president, administrator, CEO. We've all seen it in traditional business or financial architectures, right? Now, the issue with these traditional structures is that as they grow or as they start becoming more hierarchical, the bottom base or the foundation begins to decay or starts to carry the brunt of majority of the work or the responsibility, and by and large have limited growth opportunity or organizational equity, right? So that's a big problem, and it's no bueno, right? So let's go ahead and transition into the meta structure, which I think capitalizes and if not improves this archaic hierarchical approach to governance, right? So basically, as we can see here, it's a participation for all kind of ideation or idea, right? So meta governance aims to alleviate or potentially solve this problem of a centralized governance concept, right? So unlike its traditional counterpart, meta governance tends to adhere to like a flat structure, right? So as we saw before, it's a hierarchical, it's a top down or up down, whichever way you want to really label it. But meta governance kind of eliminates that structure and just levels it for a fair participatory capacity for everyone to be have an equal voice, right? So meta governance again tends to adhere to this flat structure where stakeholders consist of governance token holders who actually have a genuine interest in the growth and improvement of the underlying protocol or product at hand, right? So since these tokens are available in the open market, right, gaining an equitable stake is fairly feasible by and large, right? You could go on Uniswap, you could go on any really decentralized exchange at this point and acquire a governance token and begin participating in votes or the open conversation, whatever that may be, right? So by holding these tokens, right, participants now have the ability to manage protocol resources in the form of, let's say, a treasury, and determine collective protocol parameters, whether that be mining rewards or grants, as we've seen in basically all protocols at this point, interest rates, the list goes on and on, right? So they have an active role in the community. And this virtually eliminates, again, this hierarchical structure and creates a community-driven bottom-up or top-down structure where governance power is widely accumulated and further disseminated into the protocol that allows for further implementation, integration, and overall adoption of this said protocol, right? So with this being said, Ben has created this sort of governance structure, and let's go ahead and dive into what we've been up to over on the Ben side. So again, with this being said, over at Ben, we've embraced this exponential growth of meta governance, and we really think that it resonates with our vision and our 10-10 goal, right? We want to grow within 10 years and have over a set amount of members within our organization, membership-wise. And we think that this governance structure will be the next step towards getting to that goal. So basically how this governance structure works is within each Meta-Delegate community or committee, which I'll get into in the next slide, our members hold monthly to bi-monthly calls to further scrutinize and maybe deliberate on forum discussions or proposals, temperature checks, consensus checks, virtually anything that's going on in that said protocol. And based on whatever decision is made or whatever topic of conversation really piques their interest, the committee at hand will then execute an internal vote, right? So by this internal vote, we'll kind of gauge the sentiment. That's what we call is the sentiment check. And we get to see where the committee lies for this particular proposal, right? So varying on the leaning of this vote, and if the proposal at hand that's being discussed upon it goes to a snapshot vote, then from that internal vote, it will transfer over to that snapshot vote. So we'll vote on that particular leaning. If that snapshot vote proceeds to become an on-chain proposal or an on-chain vote, then the committee will reconvene and discuss the proposal at hand. They'll reinitiate another internal vote, and then they'll proceed to submit the on-chain proposal, the on-chain vote. Excuse me. And we're not just limited to voting. We also assist any emerging collegiate club virtually anywhere that want to become their own delegate to attain voting power, right? So let's say, by example, I was the president and founder of Mount St. Mary's blockchain club, myself and some of my colleagues. And let's say we wanted to delegate ourselves as a delegate on Uniswap, right? But we don't, unfortunately, we don't have the capital to acquire a substantial amount of uni to really have any real voice or voting power within the community. So we'll reach out to, let's say, to the Ben Uniswap Meta-Delegate and submit a proposal saying, hey, we need some voting power because we not only would we like to participate in proposals and voting and things and the open discussion, but potentially later down the line, we'll also like to submit our own proposal that will benefit the Uniswap community, right? And then on the Ben Meta-Delegate side, the community or the committee at hand will review this proposal, will talk to us over at the Mount St. Mary side and say, hey, we're gonna allocate X amount of voting power to you, and we'll help them establish a delegate that they wish to create, which has been very well up to this point. And as of now, we have about 5 Meta-Delegate structures, and we're continuing to grow. In fact, we might come out with an announcement later today or later on this weekend. But obviously, the more pronounced Meta-Delegate as of now is Uniswap. Our community is very lively, is very proactive within the Uniswap forums, as well as just within the internal chats as well. We're always creating new ideas and new proposals and stimulating the conversation on how can Uniswap as a protocol improve to benefit not only the users, but to also stimulate further growth to improve our overarching experience, right? Our latest Meta-Delegate announcement was with the Meta Steward with Gitcoin, and we're super pumped because with this Meta Steward, we aim to support any entrepreneurial endeavors that maybe our student members may have, and it aligns perfectly with Gitcoin's vision as well. So it's a very nice synergy that we've established with that Meta-Delegate again, and we're growing almost on a weekly basis at this point. But with that being said, that's basically it. That's my presentation. I appreciate everybody for showing up, and I'm open for any questions.